News Radio 600 Kogo, welcome to your weekend, San Diego Business Weekends on the air. I'm Sully. Got a big show for you today. Christina Gustin from UBS Financial is going to be joining us. Our gold expert, Trey with Ely Gold Royalties on the program. Tom Beccaro, the author of Divided Era, and Chris Goldsmith from Belly Up. We're on the air. Great to have you along. And program notes at 11 a.m. Saturday on the air with myself, little Tommy Rusty Nails on KUSI. And of course, catch me every morning here on San Diego Morning News with Ted and LaDonna, as well as Good Morning San Diego over there at KUSI. You can always reach me by going to kogo.com, keyword Sully, or follow me on all forms of social media at Sully Speaks or at Sully on the Air. Also, a reminder that this coming Thursday, the band is going to do a live stream event at the Belly Up Tavern in support of the American Cancer Society and the BAG Network. So for more information on that, you can go to bellyuplive.com, or you can go to our website, sullybandmusic.com, or on social media at Sully Band. Let's talk about the market this week. Obviously, with the debates behind us, with the election just 9 days away or something like that, we're seeing fear and greed in the market as we probably anticipated. But what's interesting is, with no stimulus in sight, our America's temporary safety net is set to expire on December 31st. And you better believe that this economy and this stock market is being driven by stimulus. You saw us go sideways pretty much for the middle of the week this week. You saw us have a really terrific jobs number. We went down from, we were just below 900,000 folks unemployed last week, and we added another 73,000 jobs or something like that. We're going in the right direction, and it was just a snoozer for the market. Market completely ignored it, and yep, we're still talking about the stimulus. And look, we're struggling to find direction in this market. I don't think that's any surprise, because I think this market built in a Donald Trump victory a while back, and now I think it's last week built in a Joe Biden victory. Now I don't think it knows what to do. And you have to remember that the big solution to COVID-19 community spread was blanket social distancing measures that caused the economic valley that we're climbing out of. And you better believe that we are still climbing out of it. I realize that the retail spending numbers came out in our favor again for the 5th month in a row. I realize inflation looks good. There's all of those metrics that were in place prior to COVID are still in place. However, we're still digging out of a hole, and I think we need to realize that when we're making plans. Here to talk about that, the smartest person I know in financial planning. They are not a sponsor of Kogo, nor are they a sponsor of this show or any other show that I host, but she happens to be the smartest person about financial planning. Her name is Christina Gustin. She's with RKG Wealth Management and UBS Financial. Christina, are you planning for 2021 portfolios as if we're still in a pandemic, or do you think we're in the clear at this point?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. We are definitely not in the clear, and we are planning for, what I think will be a long recovery. However, I talk a lot about our research. The House View Weekly, published by UBS this week, is titled 3 Reasons Why Investing Now Makes Sense. So I don't think that we're recommending that people sit on the sidelines by any means. A lot of the recovery is still in place. Those 3 reasons, number one, like you pointed out, is absolutely stimulus. I think that we expect that whoever gets elected, there will be more stimulus. And I think what you saw this week was the market kind of holding its breath, hoping that something might get done. But whether it's done sooner or later, that will certainly be supportive of growth whenever it happens.
Christina, are we looking at a situation where the market is baking in either candidate for president at this point? Or because I believe, as I said in my opening monologue, is that we thought that Donald Trump was going to be president still because the economy was doing so great. Then COVID hit, and then obviously things went sideways. But then as the economy started recovering back in May, we saw the same thing again. And now, last week we heard all the talk about the polls and the blue wave and so on and so forth, and the market spun that around. Is the market taking any of that into consideration as far as you're concerned? Because we're talking about big institutional investors here when we're talking about moving the market.
Yeah, I believe so, and I think that the market is still pricing in that Biden victory and blue wave. Now, let me clarify, because I had someone ask me after last week's show. This is not an endorsement by UBS or me personally. What UBS isn't trying to do with all of our handicapping about the election is basically to say, here's what the poll numbers are saying right now. We believe this is the statistical probability, the likelihood based on the data that exists today. We know last election, there was a huge surprise. So anything can happen, but currently this is what the data says.
So if in terms of that, and if you were thinking in terms of what the polls are saying, how are we to, as individual investors, think about reapportioning our portfolio as far as risk? Or should we have already done that at this point, Christina?
We've been making gradual moves in that direction for a long time now. The other two, I alluded to three reasons to stay invested in equities in the market today. The other two are, one is very important. You also mentioned earlier a vaccine. In the next couple of weeks, we're expecting some phase 3 trial data to come out. If the efficacy information is positive, we believe that the market will look right through the implementation phase and straight to, what would the impact of that be on the economy? And we know that it will be, a decrease in mobility restrictions, reopening, all of that. So we think that could be really, really positive. And the other thing is the central bank. Number 3 is the central bank. They're saying that rates are going to be low through 2023. If you have cash, you're moving backwards. If there's any inflation, that dynamic strengthens even more. So you need growth of your wealth to keep up right now.
It's interesting because if we always think about time horizons when we're thinking about investing, and what's interesting is I think what COVID has done to many of us is make us think about what happens if we get injured or if we can't sick, what it would cost us as far as planning for retirement. Is that starting to be a new metric or I guess a renewed metric in some of the planning that you've heard and some of the concerns from your own clients?
Yeah, I think a lot of the kind of risk management work that we do in financial planning, and when I say risk management, I mean making sure that people have adequate liquidity for financial emergencies, making sure that they have a plan for, loss of income. That's a conversation I'm having a lot more with people now, is around these ideas of how do we manage those risks.
I know that you are not a reactive financial planner because you handle part of my portfolio. You handle many of my friends and colleagues' portfolios. I know you're not reactive, but I got to ask this question. Is there any button that the UBS or any other financial professional, in your opinion, would be pushing the day after the election if one side wins versus the other? Is there an A-B decision tree there on November 4th on what you do? Is there? I mean, because let's face it. Let's go back and see George W. Bush. When he got elected, the smart money was to put your money in oil plays, right? And energy and stuff like that. Is there anything like that going on this time around?
Well, it's a great question. I think that we know what the impact on the market might be of either victory, but last election showed us that we can be totally wrong. But I'll discuss one asset class in particular that I think would have the outcome would have an impact on. Let's talk about municipal bonds. If there's a Biden presidency and taxes go up, municipal bonds become more attractive.
Sure.
And if there's additional aid to the states and municipalities that are issuing these bonds, that's also supportive for that asset class. So that is one definite opportunity that if there's a Biden presidency, I think I would recommend people take advantage of.
Well, I can't take advantage. I can't ask you that question unless I ask you about gold as well, because gold is traditionally thought of as a hedge against inflation. I'm not sure it still is thought about as strong of a hedge against inflation, but you have to think about it right now in times of volatility. Is gold a piece of everyone's portfolio, or should it be? I guess is the better question.
It's hard to make a blanket statement like that, but we have been using gold in a lot of our portfolios this year more as a hedge against volatility than inflation. I think we're watching for inflation. We're very wary of what will happen when inflation comes, and gold historically has acted, as a real asset, as a hedge against inflation. But we've been implementing it this year as a hedge against volatility, and it's actually worked really well in that way.
I think what's interesting is we have a week to go here to sort of determine which way this country is going to go. Any in your opinion, any defensive maneuvering, or are you people should be where they're at right now and kind of set it and forget it going forward?
I'm not confident that we're going to know the result on election day or immediately thereafter. I think it could take a while unless it's a really decisive outcome. So I've been talking to people for months now about just kind of getting buckled up, making sure with how your risk is apportioned in your portfolio and knowing what you own, because I think it's going to be a rocky ride.
Well, keep in mind, yeah, Christina, thank you so much. Christina Gustin, UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management. Let me tell you why this is so critical, because in 2020, in the year 2000, when we had, we didn't have a contested result, but we certainly had a delayed result. And it took 5 weeks during that hanging Chad situation in Florida for us to have a presidential announcement on who won. In that 5 weeks, and you've heard me say this a number of times, the S&P lost 10%. 10% in 5 weeks, and the NASDAQ lost 20%. So it was an ugly, ugly time. I can tell you the worst thing for stocks, I'm not talking about the economy, but the worst thing for stocks going forward into this election is going to be a contested election. And if we have a contested election, you better bank on some volatility. You know, there were, I was talking earlier about if we see a Trump win, we'll see a Trump bump again. If we see a Biden win, we'll probably see a temporary pullback. But then again, markets tend to do better under Democratic presidents. Believe it or not, under this president, he's broken all the rules in a number of areas. But the long story short is that anymore, you can't really count one way or the other, as Christina said. So maybe gold is the answer. I know just the guy to talk to. His name is Trey Wasser. He's the CEO and president of Ely Gold Royalties. They are a publicly traded company. He's going to be our gold expert here coming up on San Diego Business Weekend. Remember, 11 o'clock Saturday on the air is on KUSI with Rusty Nails, Little Tommy, and myself. Got a big show this weekend there. I'll tell you some more stuff coming up this week. News Radio 600 Kogo. Hey there, News Radio 600 Kogo. San Diego Business Weekend is on the air. Welcome to your weekend. I'm Sully. Great to have you along today. You can catch me every morning on San Diego Morning News right here on News Radio 600 Kogo with Ted and LaDonna. Also on Good Morning San Diego on KUSI. Program notes on the air on KUSI. Saturday mornings 11 a.m. with myself, Rusty Nails, and Little Tommy. Got a great show this weekend. And coming up this Thursday, the band is doing a live stream concert at bellyuplive.com for the American Cancer Society and the BAG Network. For more information on that, you can go to sullyband.com. And here we go. We're on the air. Thanks again to Christina Gustin. We were talking about volatility in the market. We were talking about how you got to hide out in a number of areas here. One of my good friends, colleague, a guy I work with, as well as an expert on the Big Biz Show, which is a nationwide television program that Rusty Nails and I host weeknights in 110 million TV homes and 150 radio stations, is Trey Wasser. Trey Wasser is the president and CEO of Ely Gold Royalties. And of course, they are publicly traded here in the States. Their stock symbol is ELYGF. In Canada, their stock symbol is ELY. Their website is elygoldinc.com. They are the North American gold royalty company, but he's also a really great top-down expert on gold. And I have to tell you, Trey is the one who told me middle of last year about where gold was going to go. And certainly that's exactly what he's done. He also was the one who pointed out, and I pointed out this chart here on KUSI as well as on Kogo Radio, about the money supply versus inflation. In fact, he supplied that chart. He's given us a new chart today on the U.S. dollar versus commodities. But before we get to that chart, I want to say hi to Trey and talk a little bit about that money flow versus the inflation. Trey, how are you, sir? Great to talk to you.
Good, Sully. How are you today?
Good, good. So here, let me ask you this. You've got 33 years investment banking experience in capital markets. You're a corporate finance specialist. You're with Merrill Lynch, Kidder Peabody, Payne Weber, and you went to the gold play after seeing the financial, going from equities to commodities, and obviously you were right about it because gold is such an important part of an investor's asset allocation. One of the things I like talking to you about is not just the gold part of it, the fact that you understand the financial markets. Can you take us through that chart of money flow versus inflation once again and talk about that going back to 1942? Because that's a very scary chart.
Well, I think if you look at this chart, you can see that there's two times when inflation for an extended period of time got up well above 10%. And that is 1943, of course, during World War II, and then again in the 80s. And we had a brief time when money supply got up to about 10% during the financial crisis 2008, but not as significant really then, and it dropped back very quickly. So when you look at these two periods, when both these periods, when inflation nears 15%, or when the money supply grows at more than 15%, you generally have inflation follow it. At least you have the only two times we have on record. And what's really frightening is that if we go back to that chart, this money supply today is over 30%, I think, as we speak.
So in looking at that chart, Trey, what it would foretell is the fact that when we saw inflation follow money flow back in 1943, which is World War II, demand was there also. Is there any argument to say that because of COVID, because people are saving more money, that there isn't as much demand this time around, so maybe not to worry about it as much? Or is that a fallacy?
Well, I think it's a fallacy because, interesting enough, and we're seeing just a lot of things change more rapidly than they were changing. I'll use one example would be the online purchasing,
sure.
Online retail. And, you see these Amazon trucks everywhere now. People are buying online because they've been locked up on COVID. But look at housing, for example, Sully. This as we came out of COVID and during COVID, in March, the real shutdown, you saw a rush towards the housing market.
Sure.
Housing markets and prices are at all-time highs.
Yeah, you're right. Well, and part of that's inventory. Talk about gold right now as a top-down, because look, you were the one who brought up the inflation story recently, and of course the Fed's, right after you talked about it, and you had that intel, but right after the Fed talked about it, the Fed changed the way they were calculating seasonally adjusted numbers and inflation as well, and it was sort of changing the playing field a little bit. But we have printed a lot of money, and this is what we're talking about here with the money flow. We've got this inflation. So here's the question: what can you do about it? What? I guess, in my opinion, you hedge your bets with gold or something like that, correct? Because I can't think of any other way to avoid it.
Well, other hard assets. You can see, but the average person can't go out and and buy a silo full of corn or stock up on natural gas. But if you look at all the commodities, natural gas up 60% in the last 6 months, lumber up 40%, and of course lumber had a huge spike, because you had a situation where the freighters that weren't coming over with the lumber, and so there was a shortage. But still, it's on a very nice uptrend. And all of this in an environment, if you look at the very bottom of that chart, you see the dollar declining, albeit slowly right now, but down 10% in this period when commodities are up. So gold just ends up being one of the best and easiest hard assets for an individual to purchase.
And what's interesting about that is I think people forget about gold when times are not volatile, but I think you have to pay attention to it regardless. Obviously, we're going into an election. Obviously, times are different right now, and I think gold is at the forefront. Let's face it, just a couple years back, we were staring at 1,425 gold. Now we're staring at almost 2,000 gold. I think it makes sense, and without you bringing it up, I'm going to bring it up. A gold royalty company is so high on the food chain, sometimes that's the way to go when you're thinking about where prices of gold are going, and when you're thinking about keeping in the game, even when volatility is there. Talk to folks about what gold royalty companies do, Trey.
Well, a gold royalty company is a portfolio of royalties, a royalty being actual, ownership of a percentage of the gold that's coming out of a mine. And that share, that percentage royalty is not affected by the costs of producing the gold or exploring for more gold at that mine. It just strictly gets takes it right off the top, just like the King and Queen of Spain used to do.
Sure, exactly. You know, your guys' assets are primarily focused in Nevada, and now, if I'm not mistaken, Nevada is the #1 mining jurisdiction in the world. Is that important, stable jurisdiction, and how is the U.S. mining world doing?
Oh, we think so. We think jurisdiction is very important, and as things get more and more troubled with all of this free money being printed all over the world, we think there'll be, some. We're just not comfortable going to Western Africa or even a lot of big parts of South America these days.
Sure.
So we stay focused in North America, and it's the tax regime in Nevada is controlled by the Mining Act of 1872. So for them to increase taxes on gold production and thus royalty income, it would take an act of not Congress, but it'd have to be on the state ballot in Nevada.
Yeah.
So that's a very comfortable situation to be in, where the government can't just arbitrarily raise taxes, because we know taxes are going up.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, and there's only three outcomes to that kind of money. That you have to either raise taxes, stop spending money as a government, which that's never going to happen, or you've got to figure out a way to monetize all of this debt. I guess my question for you is, without getting political, day after the election, does gold go one way or the other depending on the president at that time, in your opinion?
Well, that's a tough question, but I would say if Biden is elected, it will be positive for gold, because the one thing we do know that while there'll be tax increases, there'll be a tremendous amount more spending, than we're seeing now, even by the Biden administration, with his infrastructure and all his big plans and the Green New Deal and all the things that he's talking about doing.
And with that'll put gold in favor again. Trey Wasser, thank you so much. Trey Wasser, Ely Gold Royalties. I love the guy's charts, man. They are publicly traded under the stock symbol ELYGF here. If you're interested in taking a look at their company, just go to elygoldinc.com and you can check them out there. Speaking of the presidential election, we are just a week and a couple of days away. I've got Tom Del Beccaro, the author of this book, The Divided Era, is going to be joining me here in just a second here. Tom Del Beccaro is, of course, a regular guest on the Big Biz Show. He's a regular contributor to KOSI. I think he's been on Kogo a number of times, but very interested in having him swing by here, because I want to talk about, really, what is the real poll we should be looking at? Because this market is ebbing and flowing with two things. Number one, whether we're going to get a stimulus or not. And number two, what the polls are saying about who's going to be president. He's going to break that down for us. Tom Del Beccaro, author, keynote speaker, media analyst, and of course, the guy who runs politicalvanguard.com, joins us here in just a second on News Radio 600 Kogo, San Diego Business Weekend. Remember, 11 o'clock Saturday on the air with myself, Little Tommy, and Rusty Nails. Also, we got a concert coming up this coming Thursday. We're going to be talking to Belly Up about that later in the program. Welcome to your weekend. News Radio 600 Kogo, welcome to your weekend, San Diego Business Weekend. Great to have you. Sully here. I've got Chris Goldsmith, the president of BellyUpLive.com and Belly Up Entertainment, going to be joining me here on the program in just a second. But in the meantime, you heard me talking about Tom Del Beccaro, the author of the book, The Divided Era. He runs the website politicalvanguard.com. He's a regular guest on our Big Biz show, Nationwide, Coast to Coast, every weeknight, as well as he's also a frequent contributor to KUSI. I think he's been on Kogo at least 30, 40 times, and he's a familiar voice in San Diego, although he lives in the Bay Area. Tom, great to have you again, as we are a week and just a few days away from this presidential election. This particular audience that we're talking to this weekend, Tom, I don't think has got to hear your wisdom about polling and about what to believe and not to believe. You did a great piece online for Fox News this week. I'm going to let you take it away and just maybe dispel some of the myths that we're seeing when we see Donald Trump up by 15 points, Joe Biden up by 15 points. What do we believe? Because I'm not thinking that polling is the way it used to be, and I'm not sure what to believe these days.
So first of all, I'll be on KUSI election night, reviewing national results throughout the evening.
Terrific.
So that'll be great. So the polling has dramatically changed actually in the last 2 weeks, and this is normal. That as you know, for 2 years I've been saying this would be a relatively close election. That's how divided we are. But the polling is changing. President Trump, in President Trump's direction, Rasmussen reports his approval rating has jumped 8 points in the last 10 days. You saw the IBD Ipsos poll is now within the margin of error. It correctly predicted Trump's victory last time around. If you look at that poll and you take out California and New York, which of course are going to go for the Democrat, Trump's ahead in the rest of the country. And in my piece in Fox, I took a hard look of what's happening on the ground. Polling is much harder today than it ever used to be. In the old days, 60s, 70s, polling, you looked at the results from the last couple of elections and you had very few moving parts to adjust for the next election. Now you have nothing but new moving parts, it seems. And so you have to look closely at certain barometers that show where the election's going. Excuse me, one of those barometers is voter registration. And in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania and Florida, you saw huge pickups in the 200,000 range for Republicans. And history shows that 90% of new registrants vote in that next election. So that's a potential gain in both states of over 100,000 votes towards Trump. He, of course, won those. So I am predicting a Trump victory at this point because all the polls basically are moving in his direction, and Joe Biden's has the scandal that keeps breaking. There's confirmation now that he knew all along what was going on despite his denials. All of these things are coming together and pointing to a Trump victory.
So Tom, two questions. By the way, Tom Del Beccaro is with us, tomdel.com, politicalvanguard.com, his book, The Divided Era, which he wrote 3-4 years ago, and it predicted exactly what we've gone through prior to it even happening. So a couple of things. When we see campaign scandals, to use your parlance, does that sway votes, number one? Number two, I want you to comment at the same time about the significant number of ballots that have been mailed in already. And is that an anomaly, or is that just because we're doing mail-in voting this time? I'll let you handle both those at the same time.
Yeah, there's close to 40 million. It is a historical anomaly. It's never happened before. Of course, there's a greater emphasis this time around. Interestingly, as I covered in my piece in Fox, and you get it at Political Vanguard, the mail-in voting results in the swing states have not been against the Republicans. In fact, they're leading in Florida, leading in Ohio, tied in Michigan, and just down 2 in Wisconsin. That bodes well for the Republicans because there were all these predictions about how the Democrats would be running away with that. The effect that's going on right now are a couple of things. One, Joe Biden disappearing for 4 days from the trail, that doesn't work. Yeah. Especially in the face of the scandal. It makes it look like he's avoiding questions or that he's not energetic enough.
Doesn't it basically say that he's resting up? I mean, it's amazing because and look people know that I'm not a huge Donald Trump fan, but they know that I'm very much an independent as far as votes go. So I'm not beating the drum for either party at this point. But what's interesting to me is that when you're seeing Donald Trump out on 5 or 6 road shows or I guess community forums or rallies, whatever you want to call it, and the other side's not doing anything. Is that because the other side's confident, letting Donald Trump load his own gun, or is it just you think it's sending a wrong message? Is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, it's sending a wrong message. It's reinforcing doubts that people have. People doubt that Biden's energetic enough. First of all, no one's ever done this before in the television age. You don't disappear from the trail. And since there's all these allegations, people say that also reinforces he's avoiding it. He had denied the allegations, but now these reports come out from third parties saying, I was there, and he's not telling the truth. The other thing is you're beginning to see a bandwagoning effect. As I pointed out, the recent Gallup poll has 56% of Americans think Trump's going to win. There are a certain number of voters in every election, and it's a sizable number that want to vote with the winner. And the fact that Trump's going around in a very upbeat mood, it looks like he's going to be the winner. And so late breakers are coming towards him. That's being borne out in the polls. That IBD Ipsos poll, which correctly predicted the winner in 2016, has moved 5 points in the last week alone, which is consistent with Rasmussen. Of course, I don't follow the big media polls. I follow the non-media polls, and all of them, Gallup, IBD, and Rasmussen, are all moving in the same direction, all towards Trump.
So, in your opinion, if you're a betting man right now, going into this election in less than a week or so, you're saying at that point, in your opinion, that right now the money's on Donald Trump. In your opinion?
Yeah, I strongly believe that he's going to win. There's even a poll in North Carolina now where he's up. That's a must win for the Democrats. I think he's going to win, and depending on how deep this scandal gets, it's possible that the House could flip at this point.
Yeah, and by the way, so which is interesting, before you let you get out of here today, because what's interesting is that just a few weeks ago there was talk of a blue wave, Tom. How come this is just an innocent question, because a robust public polling industry is a marker of a free society. But the problem is our polling industry is different. The real environment in which polls are conducted bears little resemblance to what you read in a textbook these days. They're completely different. Is that why we heard last week there was a blue wave coming, and this week it's completely the opposite?
Well, there was a couple of things going on. First of all, my cough has nothing to do with COVID.
Don't worry about it. It was better before you got back from China, right?
There's a couple of things. There was oversampling of Democrats by media polls, like CNN, and that's purposeful. But it is also true that 10 days ago, Trump bottomed out with respect to COVID and suffered in the polls. Even Rasmussen's had his approval rating down to 44, which you can't get. It's very hard to get elected at 44, reelected at 44%. So he did bottom out 10 days ago, but he's come roaring back because he is energetic. He is talking about the future, and Biden's not talking at all except for denying reports. And also, the third element is this big tech attempt to squelch what can be read or not works in Trump's enthusiasm favor, because Trump runs against the establishment. It's obvious that big tech is trying to weigh in on one side, and that spurs on his supporters.
Hey, Tom, there was a poll that came out just last week that talked about the fact that 73% of voters registered voters feel that there's going to be violence the day after the election, regardless of what happens. Are you any comments on that? Obviously, that's kind of a tragic comment on where we are right now. It's not just protesting and peaceful protesting. It's not just like it was in the 60s. It's downright violent on both sides with respect to people's ire and the rancor involved. Does this poll kind of tell you where people's minds are at, or is this just another one of those?
And let me tell you, that works against the Democrats, because the vast majority of that 73% thinks that's going to happen on the side of the left. It is a sad commentary. I do think you find it isolated. We'll have to see. Maybe in blue states, not going to happen in red states. And if it does, that will reinforce people's belief that kind of poll reinforces people's belief that they'd rather have Trump in law and order than what they perceive. Remember, they shut down a lot of these protests recently because they were hurting the Democrats in the polls.
Yeah.
And so that has sunk in and helped bake this cake that is coming out a Trump victory.
I appreciate you taking the time, Tom. Well, obviously, you're looking forward to hearing you on KUSI on election night. We're going to have you back here next week for the San Diego Business Weekend right before the election, and we'll get a chance to chat and give the final pregame before the whole thing starts. San Diego Business Weekend on the air coming up in just a few minutes. I get to interview Chris Goldsmith, who is president of Belly Up Entertainment and BellyUpLive.com. We have a live stream show coming up this coming Thursday in support of the American Cancer Society and the BAG Network, so we'll talk to you about that. Also, I've got a very special guest that is very familiar to you coming up here in just a second. He's going to be joining me here as well, so we're going to get a chance to talk about some entertainment, how we're going to get save our stages here in San Diego, get local musicians back to work, get our waiters and waitresses and bartenders and bouncers and sound guys and security guys all back to work. Remember, 11 o'clock Saturday on the air, Rusty Nails, Little Tommy, myself on KUSI. Welcome to your weekend. San Diego Business Weekend's on the air. News Radio 600 Coke. Hey, News Radio 600 Kogo, welcome to your weekend. San Diego Business Weekend's on the air. As you know, every weekend on Saturday at 11 a.m., it's on the air with myself, Rusty Nails, Little Tommy. Look who's in studio, it's Rusty Nails. There you go.
Yeah, I thought I'd come and promote a beautiful television show there on KUSI.
Russ also hosts Big Biz Show with me and nationally every day.
Yeah, still haven't figured that out.
But I'm more excited about my our last guest here today on San Diego Business Weekend. That's Chris Goldsmith is in studio finally.
Mr. Goldsmith.
Uh-oh. You know, nobody ever gets to see the wizard behind the behind the magical Belly Up. I mean, how many years did you go to Belly Up Tavern and not have any idea who was running the place?
Up till like a year ago.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys had to, like I would say, Chris, a lot of businesses had to come out behind the curtain for this year because suddenly you guys all had to go face forward to save your businesses, for lack of a better word, correct?
Well, plus I didn't have anybody left to send out.
Yeah.
I was the last
And
man,
nothing,
one of the last
nothing
people
going
standing.
on during the day.
Can you give us a history of the Belly Up? Because I don't think a lot of people realize in the Quonset hut over there,
It is.
the several Quonset huts on Cedros Avenue and in Solana Beach, those weren't originally music venues.
No.
I believe you repurposed that.
Yes.
Talk about the history of Belly Up. a
Yeah,
little
what
bit.
were they?
Well, yeah, the buildings been there since the 40s, and they were started out. There was a lumberyard in there at one point, and there was plumbers and very much in the trades. People had their workshops there.
Sure.
And then this guy named Dave Hodges bought the whole block basically. And he kept the trades in there, but he also opened it up to artists like loft spaces and that kind of thing.
that's cool.
So there was a lot of art going on there. There was a lot of trade. There was a backpack manufacturer there, I think, for a long time. Some manufacturing.
All
went
under
in.
the big
All
the big
under
hut.
the big dome.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
whole block.
Yeah.
And then Dave decided to open a bar in 1974. And he did it just because he wanted to have a place to have a drink with his friends. You know? And
That's why we opened up this studio here.
That's it.
yes, you're well stocked.
As you can see by the decoration.
Exactly.
Place for my band to play anytime I want, and a place. But seriously, I can see the wisdom behind
Yeah,
that.
and everybody told him he'd be belly up in 6 months, and that's why he
Hence the name.
That's why he calls it the belly up.
Well, clearly he wasn't.
Yeah,
He's not belly up, and
yeah.
now he's got a club in Aspen as well, right?
36 years later. Well, he sold the club to the new owners in about 16 years ago.
Okay.
Wow.
He still owns the whole building, Dave does, and he's responsible for the Solana, Cedros Design District and all that stuff.
Sure.
But, so he's still actually our landlord, and we see him all the time.
Yeah.
But the new owners, and they own Pacific Coast Grill, Steve Goldberg and Phil Berkovitz, and they had been going to the Belly Up for a long time, and let Dave know that if he was ever
Is that how this happened?
is he ever going to sell it? Yeah.
And I have to give a lot of credit to Chris Goldsmith and Phil Berkovitz and Steve Goldberg and Chad Waldorf there because you guys gave us our first start there. Gosh, I'm going to say 10 years ago.
It's the
It
best.
might have been that long. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But you've launched a lot of big names. I mean, you've launched
And hosted a lot of big
Yeah, you
names.
have.
We've hosted a lot of big names when they were big, and we've hosted a lot of big names when they were still coming up. I mean,
Yeah.
the Black Eyed Peas used to play like once a month.
Really?
You know, and No Doubt used to play all the time. And
Really?
We had the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I was there. There was 200 and something people there the first
Yeah.
time.
So there's hope for me.
And I snuck in as their drummer, Chad Smith.
Yeah, I know.
I said, that's me.
Hey,
I said, yeah, you are.
real quickly, because I do want to talk about what you guys are up to, and we've got this live stream, but you got to tell us about some of the huge names, private parties that have happened, and one of which is Rolling Stones. But there's
Sure.
been more names than that, correct?
Yes, yeah, there have been. I mean, the Stones is the one, you know, clearly
Yeah.
the best show we've ever had, and you know, it's unfortunate that it was not a public show in some ways, but you know, it would have been a disaster. I mean, it would have been crazy. had
Well,
it
as
been
crazy as it is, because I remember I lived for many years on South Granados, just above Cedros.
Yeah.
And I could actually see out my window the belly. And when I was actually playing there, started playing there, and I saw people gathering on 101
Yeah.
on the other side of the railroad tracks, because you have to remember, belly up, railroad tracks,
Yeah.
101.
Yeah, people
and
were
then
out
walk.
on the
Then
101.
People are out on the street, and that's a good 150 yards away.
We had to put privacy screens up because also Mick wanted to jog down the back alley.
Of course he did.
And do his fitness thing, and so we put
Didn't want-
privacy screens up.
didn't want
and he was-
people-
seeing him jog.
No
'Cause he doesn't-
treadmill.
He doesn't have the best form, I guess, for jogging.
I hear he jogs like
this. He
this.
doesn't want people to
It's
see that.
weird.
Can I tell you though? Can I tell you though that anybody who's been backstage to the belly up, okay, has all thought to myself, hey, Mick Jagger used this bathroom.
Yeah.
Keith
Yeah.
Richards. I mean, honestly, I've been there, probably played there 10
Burt
times. since then.
Bacharach used this.
Of course.
I mean, the names are incredible.
All right. So, well, and you've been so generous with your time with us on a several times per month to talk about how it's been. That's a rough business that you're in right now. And you saved the business by literally doing the first virtual concert. And I believe it was Hyrie, if I'm not mistaken. I watched that.
Good
We've
memory.
we've had her on the air because of that. But I remember watching that going, well, that's cool. That's like better than going to the belly up sometime. I can see her closer anyway. It's not better to go to the belly up, but I can see her closer. Talk about how that's worked out for you guys.
Well, it's been working out really well. You know, it's. I always say it's not a substitute for going to see a show live,
Right.
But it is a great form of entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like sometimes, like you're saying, you're not in a mood to go, you know, to go spend the money and spend 5 hours and all of that to see, you know, a half an hour or an hour of entertainment.
Right.
And it's the same thing. I always say it's the same thing as a sports
Yeah,
situation.
right,
you know?
sure.
You don't always want to go to
Right.
the baseball game and
Right.
spend your
Yeah.
whole day and $400, but you'll watch it on TV.
Right.
You know,
and you'll still enjoy it.
And the
you know?
atomic groove kind of feel is not there when you're not there just dancing with everybody.
I can tell
So-
you from performing live stream there, and it feels like you're performing when you're performing.
Right.
Because I make a living in front of a TV camera. Right? There's no different for me. I know it's kind of different for the band.
Yeah.
But what's not there is the crowd interaction.
Yeah.
And even though their staff is very enthusiastic about great music they get to see all the time, it's a different deal. So my question for you is, when things get back to normal, and they will get back to normal, and you will have a packed house again, will you continue the video? Because I think you should.
Oh, we definitely intend.
That's
to.
good.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's the same thing as will the Padres have TV when they're playing live with
Yeah,
people
right.
in there.
Sure,
You should.
sure.
You should. Once people have experienced it, this has been an opportunity to introduce people to the advantages of watching live music on TV.
Yeah.
And I think people will, in my vision, all of our shows will be on available live stream while they're happening. And so you can go to the show. And I think our live experience is so good. I'm not afraid of competing with myself.
Yeah,
I
right.
think nobody's going to say, "Oh, I really want to go out tonight." No, I'll just stay home and watch it on TV.
Right.
It's more like I can't go, but I can watch it on TV.
Are the artists as eager to participate in that gig, or just we're only doing live or whatever?
Artists were one of the big obstacles to live streaming before COVID, and I think on the other side of this, I think you'll see a lot more receptiveness. I think
Why were they resistant to it?
You don't have a lot of control over what's being broadcast.
Oh, I see.
I think so, and I think there'll still be that concern. But I think with us, there's a trust factor because people know that we put out good quality. But
And you
sometimes,
build that up over the years of working with bands. And
Exactly. But
managers
if you've
and
got,
all that.
it's just like sound, man. If you have crappy camera people or a bad switcher, you have bad gear, or whatever, then artists don't know. if they're out there on tour every night, what they're going to get in terms of.
If their voice is overmodulated or it's mixed wrong or they look bad in the light, all that stuff.
I just want to get my name on the guest list for whatever the first show is when you guys, because I have to believe you guys are going to be busy. People are clawing. I mean, they're going to drive-in concerts, for gosh sakes. I mean,
I could get up there on a ukulele and charge $100.
I think people, I mean, listen, I'm watching people on, I told Russ, we have to get them on a flatbed trailer and have them do stand-up through the neighborhoods and with a big giant chip jar that they can, you know, they can do a basketball hoop. Talk about some of the changes going to Belly Up, because I walked past there 2 days ago, just happened to be on Cedros, and I see a new restaurant. You had the Wild Note. Now
you're doing some investigative.
Well, I
journalism.
didn't mean to, but I was dressed in black. It's cool.
Come sneaking down at midnight.
Well, we're super excited. We don't, we're not quite ready to make a big announcement, but it's no secret that we're redoing the Wild Note. We're going to come out with a new name and a new concept, a new interior decor, and one of the great things is a full bar right there in that place, and we'll be open during the show, which is what we weren't before. We tend to close once the show starts in the restaurant business, but we're going to be a bar and a restaurant in there now, and it's going to be a great experience.
It's always great when there's a bar and a sidewalk.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Hawaii and Florida and those type of places. We get to play, and I always say we get to play because I consider it a privilege to be able to play there this coming Thursday for the American Cancer Society and the BAG Network, and it'll be available at bellyuplive.com. You can also find more information by going to bellyup.com or sullybandmusic.com. Some of the other shows that are coming up, talk about. I saw Los Lobos. You got a big summer coming up. You got a big sponsor, big October coming. Big. Is it October?
November.
What month is it?
October.
That's
I don't even know.
We'll call it fourth quarter.
Talk about the promotion. How about that?
Well, we're just super excited because we decided to do a concert series, a virtual concert series.
Yeah. Wow.
So we have 10 shows booked between now and the end of the year. I think
Pretty familiar names too.
Yeah, it's kind of like our calendar. We're trying to regain some feeling of this is our bands, our audience. Let's have a calendar that kind of looks like a Belly Up calendar.
Yeah, right.
Because up until now, we've basically just been doing a show here, a show there, and it'd been great. Each show is great, but it didn't have a lot of context, and it's kind of hard to market one show at a time. So we got 10 shows together. We got Sierra Nevada to sponsor. We have Torrey Holistics to sponsor.
Oh, great!
So we have some great.
I frequent them both.
Yeah. Exactly.
God bless you. And we do have a special guest on the Sully Show. It's me. I'm coming.
That's
Come
right.
on, man. Let me play. When you guys are in the back
You always
room,
play
all
when
this
we
stuff.
play.
No way, man. Little Tommy's got your gig now. There's no way you're.
He's going to be sick that night.
I think we get you both fit in there. One last thing. Will the camera experience when people go live, is that going to affect anything in your opinion? You think you're going to keep it to where you can still, like in baseball games or concerts, you can still watch them live, but you can also see them up on the monitors too?
I don't think. I think in the main TV we will not probably have on because it's just distracting to the artists themselves.
Yes.
But there are some places where we're going to put smaller TVs where
I love that idea.
When
The new
you're sitting
restaurant.
down, and definitely in the restaurant we're going to have
Yeah.
a huge one. And then also around the room, we're going to have some where the artists can't see. But
So there'll be cameras on the audience too. I got to watch who I dance and
that's
how I
exactly-
dance with them.
Chris Goldsmith, bellyuplive.com. Thanks, bud. I appreciate it.
Nice
I'm
to
sure I'll
be
see
here.
you next week as well.
for having
Remember,
me.
Thursday night, we're going to do a live stream there at bellyuplive.com. There it is, right up on the screen up there. All right, News Radio 600 Kogo, welcome to your weekend. Be sure to check out On the Air on KUSI with myself, Rusty Nails, and Little Tommy.
Let me get dressed.
It's News Radio 600 Kogo.